Here we are in the Airstream, on air streaming with Robert Ellis. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Man, it's welcome back to Texas, by the way.
Thanks, I miss it here so much. I'm glad to be back. I'm leaving in the morning again, but...
Yeah. I'm very curious as a guy who's chosen to, from Texas, choosing to work out of Nashville for a lot of reasons that a lot of people do. But you have this real connection to Texas country going way back, I assume. Is it hard to pack up and go to Nashville?
Yeah, for different reasons. I think with things like the internet and a car and airplanes, it becomes more and more irrelevant where you live if you're in this business. Everything I do is traveling anyway. So, there was more like social, leaving all my friends and all the places that I like to go eat and having to just get to a new city. And, I'm from Houston, which is over 3 million people too, so making the adjustment to like a 600,000 person city was also tough.
When you're back in the Houston area, do you hit up Whiskey Wednesdays?
No,
does it still exist?
It doesn't exist.
Oh.
No, that was our thing. I don't know if we'll ever do that again.
Tell everybody what that was if they're not familiar with it.
Our band kind of cut our teeth doing this thing. A buddy of mine owned a bar. I'll give you the short version, but a buddy owned a bar, and they had music there occasionally. And on one Wednesday night, he had said, "You guys are welcome to come up and play, and we'll give you some free drinks." And so I called a couple of guys who are now in my band, and I just said we should go up and play classic country covers and just have some fun. And we did, and then that night went well. There was maybe 5 people there, and he asked us to come back, and we made it a weekly thing. And we'd play everything from George Jones to Lefty Frizzell to Hank Williams, Willie Nelson. And eventually this thing kind of caught fire and went from 5 people over the course of a few months to like 500 people at times, and all kinds of folks like punk kids and just every race and walk of life you could imagine, all there dancing to country music. So
that's a bar owner's dream. Some guys getting together for something fun that grows into a weekly revenue, right?
I guess so. It was lucrative for all of us. And, as a band, it helped us just hone our chops. That's how we got our 10,000 hours playing together.
Yeah, 10,000 hours. Mm-hmm. That's your outliers, right?
Yeah, totally.
You, from what I gather, you figured out early on in life that this is what you wanted to do. I mean, there was no bones about it. This was your path, and there was no deterring you from that. How early on were you set on being a full-time musician?
I don't know. I've wanted to do this since I was real little. My mother was a piano player and a teacher, and so it always seemed like a viable option. But I really started focusing, I think, in like 6th grade. I don't know how old you are then, but that's when I really was like, okay.
12. I've got a 12-year-old in 6th grade.
I was pretty single-minded at 12, if you can believe it or not. But I think I wanted to play basketball when I was 5 years old or something, and I don't really have the height or talent for that, and the music thing just made a lot of sense.
A lot of musicians won't admit that they're either way into a record or they've studied a musician and want to break it down and figure out what they've done. I've heard you reference many people, like, I'm obsessed with this right now, or I'm listening to this over and over and trying to dissect it. I think that's pretty cool that you own up to it. What are you real into right now that you're trying to figure out?
There's lots of records that we play in the car. We've been doing a thing called Fusion Fridays, where we just play all fusion, fusion jazz and rock music on not Friday only, but every day. We just call it Fusion Friday. So we've been listening to tons of like Mike Stern and Alan Holdsworth and some pretty cheesy fusion stuff. But I've also been super into like 90s pop music and kind of all over the place. It just depends on the moment. We listen to just about everything. But what you were saying about owning up to your influences, I think it's really odd when musicians kind of have this mentality of either I don't listen to music, or I don't practice, or I don't dissect. For me, I'm kind of neurotic, so it might just be part of my personality. But for me, I feel like, how can you know what you want to do unless you know what your options are, and you know which paths you could possibly take. This idea of just kind of creating your own history for all of music seems kind of, I don't know, egomaniacal or something.
and I know you're a big fan of Paul Simon. You give a lot of love to him. Do you think people would treat you totally differently if you were a New Yorker. You're a New Yorker instead of a Texan. You say, "Oh, I'm into Paul Simon," and they wouldn't clump you so much with this country scene.
Yeah, my buddy Johnny Fritz and me have talked about this a bunch because he's also a Southern dude, and I love it. I love being from here. I love the culture, but it's kind of a curse for songwriters in some ways. I don't feel like harmonically what we do is like anything on the radio right now that is country music. But, you know, I've got a voice that sounds like I'm from Texas, and
Right.
it's just impossible to not get thrown in there. So, you know, my hope is that people that listen to my stuff will be discerning enough to hear, you know, all of the influences rather than just the superficial kind of surface ones.
Yeah, it seems like to me like you found a voice early. You're all of 24 now?
25.
You've turned 25. and I remember the first time I heard Friends Like These, and I played it for my wife. The magic go-to record with my wife is James Taylor's Greatest Hits.
Cool.
And I said, listen to this. And then I was like, she's like, oh, who is that? She just kind of melted in the same way.
That's awesome.
Where I'm going with that is you kind of have this old soul voice. I mean, how did you tap into that, or when did you realize you were going that, or it just happened?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like everything that I do is markedly better than the last thing I did, and you know that should be your hope, is that you're growing and changing. When I listen to photographs, I feel like my voice sounds super young. You know, listening to Friends Like Those is kind of like,
And that was all of 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was maybe 3 now. But, you know, there's been a lot of playing and a lot of practicing between then and now. So I would like to think there's progression. Maybe that's an illusion. But
And I picked up something very funny you said that's worth sharing again, because you've accomplished a lot by 25. Where a lot of people are out there trying to get their legs, and you said maybe it's because I don't spend a lot of time chasing tail, which I thought was very funny. You settled down early for a musician.
I did, and like I said, I've been really single-minded about practicing, and you know, just this is my job. So when I'm at home, I wake up at 9 and I practice guitar all day. You know, it's kind of, I take it seriously because I want to get better at it, and I think that people subconsciously or otherwise can feel that and hopefully appreciate it, you know?
Well, cool. Very good talking to you,
Yeah,
Robert.
thank you.
Thanks for coming in.